is converted into a neurotransmitter. The synapse is where the nerve impulse passes from one cell to another. This is a synapse. This is pre-ganglion and this is the post-ganglion. So from here the electric signal is coming, and in the synaptic knob here there are vesicles, and this electric signal will change into a chemical signal through the neurotransmitter. This is a synaptic cleft. Here these are neurotransmitters, and this is the other neuron from where the action potential or the signal will pass. These are the vesicles storing the neurotransmitter. These are the calcium channels which play an important role. These are the membrane receptors for neurotransmitter. Now what will happen is, from here the action potential is being generated, or the excitement or the message is coming. What it will do, it will open the calcium channels. That is, this, when the action potential comes, it depolarizes. Depolarizes means there is an increase in the positivity. So after this, there is an increase in the positivity inside the cell. The calcium channels will open. This calcium channels, when open, the calcium enters the synaptic knob. The calcium, these vesicles, vesicles having neurotransmitters, what will they will come and attach to the membrane, and when they attach to the membrane and fuse, they will release the neurotransmitter. This neurotransmitter, when released, what it will do is, it will go and bind to the receptors to the next neuron, and what it will do is that these receptors are attached to ion channels, and these ion channels will open, and these ion channels will then open and cause an influx or entrance of sodium ions, and these ions will leak in, and this will cause an increase in the positivity inside and the cell. That means the next neuron will get depolarized. This is how an action potential is generated from one neuron through a neurotransmitter to the next neuron.
We have talked about the nervous system in great detail, but perhaps if you could again explain the conduction part of it to students, because it's a difficult concept and we would request you to do that again.
Okay, actually for the excitation and conduction, the most important thing the student should know is the depolarization and repolarization. They should know what is membrane potential. Now what is membrane potential is? Membrane potential is the negative charge inside the cell, that is minus 70 millivolt. When the receptors get stimulated, what happens? The sodium channels open, and these sodium channels, then what they do is they allow the entrance of sodium inside the cell. When the sodium enters inside the cell, the positivity inside the cell increases. Now when this positivity increases, the charge earlier was minus 70 millivolt, then what will happen? This negative charge minus 70 millivolt will become 0 millivolt. When there is more entrance of the sodium channels, what will happen? It will overshoot the 0 millivolt and becomes 40 millivolt, and this is what is known as depolarization, or this is what is an action potential.
So I would like to ask one thing. When the you have lots of sodium inside, how does the sodium again go back? How is the membrane repolarized?
Actually there is one more, there is a pump known as sodium potassium pump. which will allow the sodium which has entered inside the cell to go out. So
sodium pump.
So it will exchange the sodium ions for potassium ions. So that means the potassium ions will come inside and the sodium ions will go inside. But what is the important thing is that for every 3 sodium ions, only 2 potassium ions come inside. So the positivity becomes negative.
So in effect, for getting the sodium inside, there are sodium gated channels, and for getting the sodium outside, there is a sodium pump, which is basically an ATP molecule, which which generates energy to actively pump out the sodium. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it will utilize some energy, and then the pump will act, and the sodium will go out, and the potassium will come inside. Now, once this action potential has been generated, now it has to, like I earlier told you, that from sensory neurons it goes to the interneuron. So for that you need a synapse. That means synapse is connection between 2 neurons, and what will happen is that for this synapse, for this communication, one important thing is that electrical signal is changed into a chemical signal. Here the neurotransmitter come into play. So what happens when the action potential reaches the synaptic cleft? The synaptic cleft becomes depolarized. This depolarization causes, there are some calcium channels present on the synaptic cleft. They open and the calcium enters, and the entry of calcium triggers the vesicles which have neurotransmitters inside the synaptic cleft to fuse to the outer side of the synaptic cleft membrane. And then what will happen is, through endocytosis, this neurotransmitter get released. When this gets released, these neurotransmitters get attached to the receptors present in neurons where the message has to be passed. When these neurotransmitters get attached to the receptors, they will again open the sodium channels in the next neuron.
So this also suggests that between these 2 neurons there is a gap. Otherwise they could have been connected, but there is a gap, and the neurotransmitters travel through that gap to the other.
So that's why we need a chemical signal instead of a electrical signal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.